Welcome back. You're still watching Network Africa on Channels Television. Now, eyewitnesses in South Africa are accusing rescue teams of being tight-lipped as regards the status of the trapped South African mine workers. A local news agency in the country adds that the management of the mine has declined to give any update about the 3 individuals who've been supposedly trapped underground since Friday. It also adds that the 3 who were previously heard knocking had not been heard for 70 hours. It's believed that they were working above ground when their metal container fell into a sinkhole. Now, you will recall that on Tuesday, February the 9th, the South Africa Constitutional Court heard the case against President Jacob Zuma as regards the use of $23 million worth of public funds to renovate his Nkandla home. On that day, former ANC Youth League leader Julius Malema told crowds of opposition supporters gathered at a rally in Johannesburg that victory is certain.
This was what the streets of Johannesburg looked like on Tuesday, February the 9th. Supporters of the South African opposition were demanding that President Zuma pay back the $23 million worth of public money he allegedly used to renovate his Nkandla home. The Constitutional Court will decide in the next few days if it will hear a case to decide whether a report from South Africa's anti-graft authority accusing President Zuma of misusing state funds was legally binding. Crowds of supporters of the Economic Freedom Fighters opposition party gathered to hear their leader, Julius Malema, speak. Malema previously served as president of the ruling African National Congress Youth League.
All of them have said the remedial actions of the public protector are binding. All of them have agreed that President Zuma must pay back the money.
After months of denying any wrongdoing, President Zuma finally agreed to pay back some of the money spent on improvements that did not relate to security and asked the Auditor General and Finance Minister to decide on an appropriate figure. However, the Democratic Alliance, the main opposition party, and the radical left-wing EFF do not believe President Zuma's concession goes far enough.
The highest court on the land says the man has violated the Constitution. You have no option but to remove the man. If they don't remove Zuma, we will go for Parliament and demand that Zuma must be impeached.
One member was very thrilled that President Zuma was being tried.
It's a victory for poor people, it's a victory for the Constitution, and it's also a victory for public protector. For many years, the president has been defying and undermining the call of the masses. So today, the court have shown that we cannot have such a man with questionable integrity.
For now, all eyes and ears are on President Zuma's State of the Nation speech, which he will be giving this evening.
Staying in South Africa, protesters have gathered outside of the parliament ahead of President Jacob Zuma's State of the Nation address, which will be taking place tonight. A massive security buildup is underway in the center of Cape Town before the much-anticipated State of the Nation address. We also understand that businesses in the city center are closing early in anticipation of possible trouble from one of the several official and unofficial marches of unhappy South Africans. Based on what's trending on Twitter, we are not seeing much support for President Zuma. However, the president's 9-point agenda gives us a vivid picture of what he plans to discuss tonight. Here's a rundown of what was put on social media today. What we understand the president will be discussing top on the agenda is energy resolution. Then he will also be discussing the revitalization of agriculture and advancing benefication. Implementing industrial policy is also on the list of items to be discussed. He will also be discussing industrial policy action plan implementation, private sector investment, moderating workplace conflict, unlocking SMEs' potential, state reform, and growing the ocean economy. But for now, for more on what's going on in South Africa tonight and the build-up, we go live to Johannesburg, where the CEO of Junto Media, Lucas Malloy, Mr. Lucas Malloy, is standing by. Mr. Malloy, thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa.
Not a problem, Cynthia. Thank you very much, and apologies that you are taking me even on the call today.
No problem at all.
I'm running quite around today.
No problem at all. Now, is there more up for discussion than the 9 items which were listed?
Cynthia, look, there will be more for discussion. I think what is going to be interesting today is the fact that there is 2 opposing statements that are coming out, where Julius Malema has stated that they will interfere with the president when he's making a speech, and where the Speaker of Parliament, Baleka Mbete, is saying she is not going to allow any point of privileges or anything, so she is not going to allow anyone to interrupt in that. So it's a very interesting debate. Last year, when we saw it happening at the SONA, there were no rules, parliamentary rules, that were guiding around that. Where we see this year, the rules have been amended to be able to govern if such a situation happens. So even for us, as much as the world, it's very interesting to see what is going to take place.
Now, Mr. Malloy, how much support is there for President Zuma? Because if we're going to go by what we're seeing on Twitter and the protests going on outside of Parliament, it doesn't look too good for him. Look,
I think South Africans have gotten to be people that are much driven by protest on that. But I think also that the protesting also has always had a sort of a guiding element to it. So they were allowed to protest today, but later on in that, the protest will stop to allow the proceedings of the SONA to take place. It was for them, they getting the maximum impact with their protest because everybody is zooming into Cape Town to see what is happening. So we will see those happening, but just once we get closer to the speech and that, all that we'll see, we will definitely get to see the parliamentary proceedings happen.
Now, Mr. Malloy, a lot of observers are betting that we might see a repeat of history tonight in terms of President Zuma probably being heckled or shouted down based on the protests that we're seeing outside of Parliament and also what you're seeing on ground. What are the chances of that actually happening?
You saying the chances of what happening, Cynthia?
Of the president being shouted down, as was the case the last time he gave the State of the Nation address.
Yes.
What are the chances of that happening?
Look, the chances of people disrupting Parliament, the chances are there. But we're now sitting in a place whereby the Speaker of Parliament has been given a little bit more power to call the situation to order, which means she can call first at the guard of the House. So she will call the member to order. If the member fails to come to order in that, she will ask the member to leave the House. If the member fails to leave the House, she then, according to the process and the regulations, will have to ask the guard of the House to ask the member out. If that fails, to remove the member, and then they will then ask the parliamentary forces to remove the member. So last year we didn't have that process in the rules of Parliament and that. So people could do that and interrupt without any much facing any much sanctions and that. This time around, there are laws that are amended to allow that to happen. So even the EFF members going in, they will be careful to make sure that they do not flout the regulations of the House because they can be removed legally.
Finally, just last question: what time exactly is the State of the Nation address going to be given tonight?
With the speech going on today, Cynthia, the speech is coming at the back end of many things happening. If we look from the side of the president and that, it's going to be a very difficult speech. It's probably going to be the most difficult speech that he's had. He's been weakened very much politically at this time around and that. He's got very serious questions that he needs to answer to.
Yes.
It's the week where he was found that he has flaunted the Constitution.
But Mr. Malloy, what time do we anticipate that it might start despite all this? What time do we anticipate that it might actually begin, the speech?
What we can anticipate today is we can anticipate a speech that is going to show the president a remorse on what is happening from the side of the ruling party.
Mr. Malloy, thank you so much for joining us. Mr. Malloy, thank you so much for joining us. As always, we appreciate your time on Network Africa. Now, if you'd like to keep up to date with what's going on regarding the State of the Nation address in South Africa, feel free to go to Twitter and look for the hashtags Zuma must fall, Zuma must resign, Zuma must go, and SONA 2016. Still to come on Network Africa, the African Union uncovers Al-Shabaab plans to disgrace troops. Find out how in just a moment.